If you watched all my prior videos, the next thing we're gonna work on is bringing the body and soul into agreement of what we're gonna create. The mind, body, and soul has to be in agreement. You've decided to finally bring what's in the 4D into the 3D. You have committed to that decision. However, you're facing a frustrating thing where you might be putting in the work energetically during the day, but when you wake up in the morning, somehow things have been offset. The first thing that comes to your mind when you wake up is the old reality. Why do you remember the old reality when you wake up, when during the day you have forgotten about it? Does it even make sense? And this is because you are purging. The old reality is not gonna leave just like that. It's been with you for a while. So it has poured itself, leaked itself in different parts of your life where you think that you have done the work, but it's still the evidence of it in your mind that's still showing up. And you're thinking, well, I'm doing this work every day. Why is it not catching up? Why is my mental not catching up to my world? Because this is going to require the next level of commitment. And this level of commitment is controlling the way you sleep, controlling the way you wake up. But what do we mean by controlling? We forget what going through social media does to us, even if we try to be intentional, especially right before we go to sleep. We are introducing new data, new versions of reality that will completely wipe out what we have been working on. And so right before we go to sleep, we have to dedicate about an hour to visualizing what our next day will look like. A simple exercise that we can do is mentally visualizing what feels expansive, what feels exciting, what feels good, and what feels limited. So a little game with yourself. Let's see. I think of omasake. Does that feel expansive to me, or does it feel like waste? This will be different for everyone. A monthly spa membership, would that feel indulgent, and do I feel undeserving, or does it feel like my life? The more exciting, expansive it feels, the more the right direction you're in. So we prep ourselves to do that, and right before we go to sleep, tell ourselves, alright, so you go to sleep, you wake up, and you repeat those words before you do anything. Wow, wasn't that easy? And what we're doing is training the messages to be threaded in one line. If I'm training my brain to say the thing from the night before to the next day, that means I have taken over. I am driving the car then. There is nothing interrupting me. So we wait in those moments when we're very tired. Just like now for me, actually. I need to take a nap or sleep soon, even though it's sunny out. This reminds me, there's a very important point that I need to bring up. There's something very important I need to bring up, and I will remember, but I will finish this thought. So, the next morning, we tell ourselves, like I said, wow, wasn't this easy? And see, the thing is, when you have the life that you have dreamt of and imagined, you don't wake up in a frenzy. You wake up slow because you've gotten it, right? You wake up slowly and you delay eating. Now, why would you delay eating? Because, like I said, in the 3D, you're still purging these old ideas, and we don't want to give it a vehicle to cling to. So I've noticed that there are certain things, heavy dairy, I've noticed heavy dairy, like a lot of milk, or even eating as soon as you wake up solidifies the unwanted messages that you have. And so what you want to do is delay it, but also focus on drinking tea and drinking liquids with no caffeine. At least, can you do it half the day or something? At least until you make the switch. And if that's not possible, if you're gonna take caffeine, which is completely understandable, just make sure careful about any milk that you're using, whether it be dairy or non-dairy. I've noticed there's something about it that really impacts the nervous system. Both ways, they both do it. It's pretty crazy. I'm very intrigued as to what the milk will taste like in Europe, in a different continent, because there's something about the milk in America, both dairy and non-dairy. The 3-4 ingredient ones are better without the seed oil. So you're focusing on that. I think I said what I wanted to say, thank God. If you're unable to, as you're imagining your day of what you want it to look like the next day, pay attention to what details sit right in your body and what details don't. This will give you a clue to what your frequency is like. For example, if you tell yourself or ask yourself what the day would look like when the 4D and 3D are lined up, what would that day look like? What would your voice sound like? And introduce new different ideas, right? Maybe say, oh, I'm working a 9 to 5. See how that feels in your nervous system and how it reacts. If it doesn't feel excited or expansive, it will give you a clue as to what you are allowing and what you won't allow. Because it's interesting is sometimes we can say, I want a job, but then if it makes us closed off, or if the answer is actually don't really need a job, but it's just more familiar, will not come in. So paying attention to how our body is responding to these different thoughts that we're introducing when we are right before we're going to sleep and right before we're waking up, right? Maladaptive daydreaming. We can do that, but if we're not in the state of this in-between liminal sleepiness where we're awake but we're kind of not asleep, will it really register? Not really. There's something very powerful about the elements. Wind is very purifying and it moves things quicker. It moves energies quicker in the body. So if you're able to, and you're lucky enough to be around the element of wind, it will be gorgeous for you. And if you aren't able to be around the wind, right, because it's not always there, something that reminds you of that would be perhaps even doing yin yoga, focusing on allowing our energies to move faster. So writing is really interesting because when you write, your mind, body, and soul are all in agreement. It's one of those rare times where there isn't really conflict, and it's one location where they all can meet without disagreement. Writing is a way to link the 4D and 3D. It's a vehicle for communication. It's an integrator, but also it's a feedback loop into both systems. So obviously we know about rewriting our day. Are you willing to focus on rewriting your day every day? Mapping out, before you go to sleep, thinking about how you're gonna wake up. Wow, we're gonna close it off by remember to do the wow wasn't that easy exercise right before you wake up and right before you go to sleep. And let me know how that goes.